What is a literary agent looking for, and how do you query a literary agent as a first-time author? I'm Sarah Bullen. I'm a literary agent and writing coach, and I'm just going to talk you through some of the steps and some of the ideas of what we are looking for when we are engaging with a first-time author or just getting query letters. So the first thing to know is that a literary agent's job is to look for talent. All right. When you are a first-time author, you start to send off your manuscript, you are going to have completed it. It's going to be the best version of your manuscript you can possibly have written. You are going to have done a fantastic book proposal if it's a nonfiction, or a synopsis if it's a novel. And you are going to have crafted and recrafted your query letter. So those are the kind of elements we need in the very first salvo that we get as literary agents or as publishers. A literary agent and a publisher, and querying them, is very much the same process. You're going to approach it in the same way. Your first job is to research. And why research? You're looking for agents and publishers who publish in your genre. And this is probably the most important thing to understand. So if you're writing a novel, you're looking for publishers who publish your kind of novel. So if it's young adult, you're looking at young adult publishers or literary agents, or if it's a sci-fi, you're going to look at people who publish and work in sci-fi books. Some agents would cover a number. So you may have somebody who does women's fiction, sci-fi, and young adult. Although I tend to find that quite rare. You find that agents tend to like a niche and have a particular kind of book they like. So you've now found, you've done your research and you've come up with a hit list of, let's say, 20 agents and 20 publishers. Your next job is to send off the query. Often it's going to be online. So with publishers, you're going to go into Submittable or one of the online portals. They may have a form you fill in, which is why all your pitch material is so important, because some will ask you for a 2-pager, some will ask you for a 1-paragraph, others will ask for your first few chapters. So you need all that ready. And if you're querying a literary agent, they're not going to have a submittable platform, but they're going to ask you to send them that in an email. Now, I'm going to say around about 20 of these emails a month, potentially more. So that's quite a large volume. So I'm going to talk you through the process I would go through when that comes into my inbox, so you as author can understand what you need to be doing to get the attention of a literary agent. So the first thing I want to see in the title of the query letter is query. I want to have the word novel or nonfiction, and then potentially the title. So A Perfect Storm, let's say. Query, young adult novel, A Perfect Storm. My first discernment will happen right there and then. If I do not represent young adult, I'm going to forward it on to a colleague who may, or I may simply forward it to my assistant, who usually gets these first, and she will immediately know to send a rejection letter. Okay, so please be aware, I haven't even opened your email yet. Why? I don't represent young adult novels. Okay, so that's why your list is the most important thing, that you've got the right people you're sending your book to. But let's say I do. Let's say I represent young adult novels. I will open your email, all right? And the very first thing I want to see in the body of an email is, what is the book about? So I want young adult. Hi, Sarah, I'm I'm emailing you about representing my debut young adult novel. And then what I want is a very, very, very tightly crafted, what I would call back cover blurb. We call it a query letter. And in that query letter, it's going to sum up very tightly the main plot of the book. Very often in these query letters, you don't put the character's name. Instead of the name, you would say something like, a 16-year-old virtuo violinist is pulled into a world of intrigue and mystery when her young brother goes missing. So notice now I've layered some very important things in this. Number one, I've put the age of our protagonist, our hero. Secondly, I've given a very tight 3-word kind of summary, so the agent immediately gets, or any reader gets, the character. Because if I say a 16-year-old virtuo violinist, as opposed to a 16-year-old angry gothic punk, immediately the characterization is different. So having these blurbs so tight, so well written, so vetted by friends is important. And then you'll continue with the complete, as you probably have worked on, what is a back cover blurb? Why are you engaging my attention? Okay. And I want to see two things. I want to see character and I want to see a plot. And by a plot, I want to know so that something happens, that there is an inciting incident that is pulling your protagonist, your hero, into a world in which is uncomfortable, unwanted, and unwelcome. So I absolutely know that the book has a story attached to it. First salvo, if the literary agent gets to the bottom of that email and they are still engaged, they're going to do the next thing. They are going to open your attached synopsis. So in a novel, it's a novel synopsis, but if you are writing a nonfiction, it is a book proposal. So I hope you know the difference. But let's keep with the novel analogy here. So I'm intrigued enough by the blurb, and something in the blurbs intrigued me, and I can't always put my finger on what. Most often I can see it's well crafted. I can see it's been worked, and I can see there's a story, and it's in the right genre that I like. Okay, I'm going to open your synopsis, and then I'll probably read through your novel synopsis. So the important thing is we don't want to read the book at this point, right? We simply want to see, is there a story? Is this well crafted? And that's where the initial interaction will end. However, the other thing I like as an agent is for you to attach 3 to 5 chapters. Now, this is step 3. I've liked the subject line. I've read the query letter. It's engaged me enough to open your novel synopsis. And if the novel synopsis is good enough, and by that I mean there's a good story, I can see you can write a book, there's something interesting about this, I will go and open your first 3 to 5 chapters. And I will read those. What do I want in those 3 to 5 chapters? I want to be gripped. And it's a very hard thing to relate as to what are you looking for. But you know it when you see it. You know when you see a story. And that will engage me potentially enough to say, thank you so much. Do you mind sending your full manuscript? So that is how, so if I'd walked through all of those steps and I'd liked the first 5 chapters, I would then reply and say, thanks so much. Is the manuscript ready? Is it available? Can you send it? I'm going to pause there because I'm going to talk what happens next in the next few minutes. I just want to remind you of what I'm looking for and what is absolutely critical in those first 5 chapters. There has to be engagement with character. So a character I either like or I simply just am interested in. I very quickly want to see that something is happening. So I don't want backstory. I don't want a build-up. I want super fast to understand that something's about to happen. The third thing, and I need it to happen within the first 3 chapters. So your inciting incident is this event. New job, new man, a discovery of a body, having to move, an abduction, something that catapults your character into story. And the third thing I want to understand by the end of what I'm going to call the beginning hook is that there's a story goal. So I know what that character needs to do next. And it's often quite simple. It can be survive the night. It can be get through the jungle. It can be find my brother. It can be find the killer. That's the basis of any crime book. It can be solve a mystery, but we need to understand. And as agent, I want to see that you understand story. Right. That's what we're looking for in a novel. In a nonfiction, it's really simple. We are looking for one thing. An indication of book sales. And when I look at an indication of book sales, I am interested in your topic. It must be topical, timeous, on trend, and it must speak to a trend happening in the market in the next year or 2 years, because the book's going to take that long to come out. But more than any of that, I am looking at who you are. What is your network? And can I on any level predict your sales and how many people will buy your books, or how big your engagement is, how many talks you do, how many radio shows you're on, how many book clubs you will speak at, how many people are your followers, particularly your email database, not as interested in Instagram, not as interested in other social media, even though we will pay attention to that. So novels, I'm looking for story. Non-fiction, I'm looking for, can this person sell their own book? Can I get them on talk shows? Can I get them in front of an audience? Are they available and willing? Are they out there? Do they live the brand and speak it? And the final thing I'm looking for in a novelist, in a debut author, although this is not as important as a good story, I'm also looking, are they somebody I can invest in? So, is this somebody who's got potentially at least another 8 books in them? Because the investment in an author is large. As an agent, it can take me easily up to a year to sell your book to a publisher, not always. The publisher is going to look at exactly the same things as an agent does. They're going to say, this is a good novel, we like it, but where's this author going as a novelist? Do they have another 10, 15, 20 years of writing? Because the money we're going to put into them, the publicity we're going to put behind them is going to demand of them more than a one-hit wonder. So not to freak out about that, not to sell them a trilogy. We don't want that. We don't want that, but we will look at your age. And we will look at your capacity to write more. So those are the initial things, the considerations that will go through my mind. I'm going to tell you another thing I like to see in a query letter, and this is critical. I want you to reference 2 to 3 books your book is similar to, and I need to know who they are. So I want to know, if it's a nonfiction, that this is a Joe Dispenza mixed with the science of Joe Dispenza mixed with the spirituality of so-and-so. If it's a novel, I want to know that this is a Jodi Picoult style deep investigative fiction, but mixed with a young adult, the kind of young adult style of Sarah J. Maas. Okay, that's a little bit too different for authors. But immediately I understand what your book is as a literary agent. Critical, critical, critical. And if you don't know it, that's also going to be a problem. So what are we saying here? We're saying write a good book, work your book, get beta reader feedback, get people to help you get it as best as you possibly can, and then get your pitch deck really solid, really solid. Get your 20 agents, get your 20 publishers, and begin the process of pitching them with the right words. Because remember, we are working in the world of words. I will judge you on all the things that you've put on paper that come in that simple email to me. And that's why that crafting, that final bit is quite important, because just one little thing may catch my attention as an agent. And it can be something very small and unpredictable. It could be, for example, that you've set the romance on Ithaca. And Ithaca is an island I have been to in Greece, potentially. So that tiny little trigger may be why I open the next and open the next and open the next. So always include something personal, and you don't know what it is that will make somebody read it. Before I sign off, expectations. What can you expect when you send out your query letter to an agent, to a publisher? The first thing is quite a lot of time before they respond. You initially can get a thank you so much for your submission and allow us 90 days to revert. You can get a no very quickly. The no will come very quickly, as I said up front, is you've just pitched the wrong person the wrong book. Or you've pitched them a book and they just had such a similar book. This happens all the time for me with cookbooks. I've got a great cookbook. I go to publishers, I present them. They go, oh, that's so fantastic, that book. We just brought one out this year exactly like that. So it's not always personal. It's very seldom personal, actually, when they say no very quickly. It's just not on their book list. dream list, let's call it. Then what can happen down the line is you get that engagement from them in which they ask you some questions or they ask you for the full manuscript. And that's a huge step in the right direction. If you send them your full manuscript, you actually have to allow them about 4 months to read it. Because first, the agent, like myself, may read it, okay? And then secondly, particularly with publishers, they will send it to a blind reader. So somebody who has no idea who wrote the book, whatever, and they'll get a reader's report from somebody else. So the whole time as an author, you're sitting biting your nails thinking, what's happened to my book? And they're just going through the very slow mechanisms of the publishing industry. So that's why you just have to sit tight and wait. But waiting doesn't mean you can't keep sending your book to other people. Sending your book out is not exclusive. It's almost like Tinder. You're not in a relationship with anybody until you're in a relationship with anybody. You're looking, you're pitching everybody. So please know that. And the last thing to say about getting a publishing deal is it is a combination of really hard work and a little bit of a touch of magic. The hard work is in the writing of the book, of understanding genre, of understanding the thrust of a story, of knowing the scenes that belong in the kind of book you're writing, of understanding what a reader is looking for when they walk up to that shelf and pick up that book. The hard work is also in the crafting and the rewriting and the pitch deck and the rewording and the playing with the word and getting the title right and getting all that information together. And also the hard work is the sending it off relentlessly, without a deal, without a promise. But the reward and the magic comes with just something you can't anticipate. That one person who the book just triggers something in them and they open it and they believe in you or they just like it and they go with it. So we don't know what it is. It's a combination of both of those things. So keep crafting, keep sending, and keep the faith. And I wish you best of luck with your endeavors.